Hello and welcome to New Administration Opportunity Outlook. It is our first webinar of the year from Summit Insight. My name is Judy Bratt, and here's our 7 minutes of early bird chat. So I want to welcome you, and we're going to have a really active, engaged session. I'll formally kick it off at the beginning, but you who are here on the chat right away, I want to invite you to say who you are and where you're from and what you do. So let's see what's up with you and where you are. Some of you I've met before, some of you I have not. And I'm really glad you are here. So, Alex, David, Wayne, Brandon, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you and what do you do? If you've got questions, things you're hoping to get answered, now's the time. You get extra bonus for showing up early. Hey, David in Atlanta, what do you do? And Vikram, hello. It's so good to see you again. Let us know how things are going at Paramount Software. Hey, Amber, we're doing our preview chat for bonus chat for early birds. Hi, Wayne in
wonderful.
Houston, and started an electrical contraction business. Hey, Vikram, thanks and back at ya. Electrical contracting, cool. Wonderful. Alex, what's your business about? Transportation. David's a transportation industry railroader. I don't think I've heard that as a noun, a railroader. That sounds fun. Excellent. And this is certainly a wonderful time to be in the transportation industry. There's a lot of important stuff that's got to be moved across the country right now. All right. Come on in. If you're just arriving, Ashley, welcome. Janet, welcome. Glad to see you. This is our bonus time. We got 4 minutes and we're going to start at the top of the hour sharp. We've had nearly 300 people have registered, and the first 100 who log on are going to get the goods. So, Lawson, hey, this is our bonus 4 minutes of networking as we get to the start. So, drop into the chat where you are and what you do. I'd love to see. And if you've got a question you really want to ask, now is the time. So, get your bonus question queued up in the chat. Alex, IT managed service, security and business accounting support. Excellent. All right. And okay, so Derek Senior, Director of IT from Itasca. If you're in here and your name is not Leah Edwards, would you please click on your picture? There's 3 little dots by the mute. Click on that and rename yourself with your actual name. That will make it a lot easier for me to figure out who's who. Teresa, welcome. It is so great to see you again. I feel like it's old home week. Janet, welcome. I'm so glad you are here. We're 3 minutes to the top of the hour. We're just kind of doing a little informal networking and saying hi. Ashley, Florida Elevator Company. Oh, congratulations, Ashley. One of the things we were talking about in some of our other sessions and with some of my partners, one of my Top Gun coaches with my program, Will Randolph, CEO of Think Acquisition, he does a great program called Williams Whiteboard on LinkedIn. Check it out. He's got nearly 50 episodes and they're all fabulous. But one of the things he was suggesting is when you're trying to make connection with your federal buyers, instead of saying, how can I help you? Which you're just giving them more work to do. Flip the words around and say, how I can help you. What a great way to connect, because you can only say that if you've researched what someone does, you have some idea of what that individual federal human does, what their mission is, and where you fit or could fit in their world, what problem you can solve for them. Awesome. Ashley, congratulations. That's a win. Teresa, great to see you. Lawson. So, Lawson Hampton Nexus Technology Solutions. Excellent. Welcome. So glad you are here. We're going to get started in 2 minutes. We've got people logging on from all over the country. I'm very excited. And people will learn that you show up on time. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to get started in just 2 minutes. I'm very excited. So come on in. Okay. If you're just arriving, hey, Ronnie, thanks for introducing yourself. Ronnie McCoy, Business Enterprise Consulting. Great. Our participant numbers are kicking up. We've got 60 seconds to start. If you're just arriving, welcome. I'm Judy Bratt, and I'm so glad you are here. Hey, if we are meeting for the first time, I'm so excited. If we're meeting for the first time and you've never been on one of my webinars before, type me in the chat so I can be sure to get to know you. Type me. Who are my newbies here? And we're just meeting each other for the first time. Wow. Excellent. Fantastic. I am honored. The most precious commodity that any of us has as a business owner is our time. And you've decided to take this time, spend it together. And so my commitment to you is you make sure that you come away with at least one thing that's of value to you. We are now kicked over to counting down to the top of the hour. I have 13:59 military time. We're just about to start. So hold on to your hats. And we are going to start right now. So it's the top of the hour. Hi, my name is Judy Bratt. I'm CEO of Summit Insight, and welcome to the new administration Opportunity Outlook with guest speakers Lisa Shea Munt and Amber Hart, co-founders of the Pulse of GovCon. My name is Judy Bratt. I'm CEO of Summit Insight. My commitment to you is to bring you the best of over 33 years in working with over 5,000 folks, leading them to hundreds of $1 million in wins in the federal arena. I'm Amazon #1 best-selling author of now the second edition of Government Contracts Made Easier. And I'm all about the art of human connection, the right data for the right conversations with the right people at the right time to build your federal business. And that is why my guests are here as well. Because what's happening today, and you can get chapter 1 free of the book. We're going to put the link in the chat and also make sure that you get it in the follow-up email as we go. So we'll have that for you in a minute. The heart of federal human connection meets the pulse of GovCon. Here's where it happens today. And so I'm going to launch a quick poll while I go through our, there we go, while I go through our rules of engagement. So tell us a little bit about who's in the room. But right now, I just want you to know that drop your questions in the chat as we go. All right. And we'll get to all the questions that we can. And anything we don't get to, we'll forward to our panelists so they can respond to you later. This is the deepest content delivery that we do all year. To answer the question, yes, everyone here will get the recording and also a link where you can get to a page where you can download the file, because it's a very content-heavy file as well. There are times when marketing and sales, and it should be always, are an act of service. The webinar series that I do is normally very high engagement, and this particular webinar, I'm going to take a step back. If you and I are new, we haven't met, there'll be plenty of time for us to get to know each other and for you to get a sense of what I do and how I work with companies. The best way I can be of service to you is to give the spotlight and all of the stage to our two guest speakers. If most of the time you're the smartest person in the room, you need to find another room. I've spent the last couple of years looking for another room, and these two ladies are front and center of two of the brightest minds in forecasting and providing services for government contractors who want to grow. And I'm honored to also call them my friends, which is why they get to be here. Here's what we're going to cover today. And we're polling here. We've got 66% of the vote in. So come on in, let us know a little bit about yourself, and we'll share who's in the room where it happens. We're going to cover contract opportunities impacted by the new administration, how to identify who is buying what you're selling, how to build an actionable communications plan, and ensure that your sales pipeline works for you all year long. There'll be some action steps, and we'll have links, and you'll know how to get your bonuses. So I'm going to take a quick look here so we can see. Here's ending the polling. So you can see a little bit. We'll share the results with you so you can see who's in the room. And so we've got people pretty much split. Lots of people, smaller businesses, you have a lot of work to do. So my hat is off to you for taking your precious time to join us. And I want to make sure that you come away with actionable intelligence. You've got lots of different ways to reach your buyers. Awesome. And folks here, well over three quarters of the people here winning federal business is at least a 9 or 9 out of 10. So you are in the right place. Congratulations. You get a sense now of who's in the room where it happens, and you're going to commit to action. So get out a notebook, because in a little over an hour, I'm going to ask you, what one action are you going to commit to that will bring you closer to your federal goals? And with that, we're going to switch over the share as I'm going to introduce our guests. So we're going to switch the share over. And Lisa Shea-Munt is co-founder of the Pulse of GovCon. I met both of these entrepreneurs when they were getting ready to take the big step and launch their business. And I have to tell you, I was intimidated. I thought these folks are not only not the same old stodgy folks we see, they are smart, they are good looking, and they are younger than I am. I thought that's not going to work well. Why don't I get to know them instead? I could probably learn a great deal. And sure enough, and that's part of how we became friends over the last 3 years. Lisa Shea-Munt is co-founder and received her master's and her bachelor's in writing, rhetoric, and technical communication from James Madison University. A Lean Six Sigma Green Belt and CF APMP. She is a coveted, what a lovely adjective, a coveted proposal consultant who applies her 10 years of federal procurement experience in the formulation of strategic, comprehensive, and compelling proposals for a wide array of government contractors in every industry. She uses her experience to manage the strategic direction of the Pulse of GovCon. Amber Hart is also co-founder, along with Lisa, received her bachelor's in conflict analysis and resolution and global affairs. You actually finished it. I only did a couple of courses and decided I had to pick a business where I could be more successful.
I should have done that.
I think you're doing great. Amber's a skilled federal business developer. She has 10 years experience in all aspects of selling to the federal government and brings the critical knowledge and experience in navigating the congressional and federal procurement data sources, from legislative, appropriations, historical, and discretionary spending for the Pulse. So we have words and data. Amber and Lisa, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Judy. Really appreciate it. And welcome, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to get through, so buckle up, because we got some content that we are about to steamroll through. Before we begin, unfortunately, we do want to start with a legal disclaimer, because it's hard out there. So just FYI, this presentation is confidential in the sense where you are not to reproduce or distribute it to the public or press. Everyone that's receiving it shall not sell it. All right, we all good there? Before we can even really talk about anything else, we just wanted to put out that disclaimer. But as Judy mentioned, we are the Pulse. Thank you for that lovely introduction of who you would be stealing from if you were to try. The Pulse is a boutique federal market intelligence firm, and we specialize in GovCon storytelling. Our business model is threefold. We have a membership platform full of market intelligence. We do federal consulting, and we offer training. So this is pretty par for the course for us here today. We have 3 objectives that we're going to try to just plow through. The first of which is positioning yourself for success, because you need to know and identify who is buying what you're selling. Otherwise, nothing else matters. After that, we're going to discuss how to strategize your sales tactics, which includes building that actionable communications plan that Judy mentioned, and then ensuring your sales pipeline will work all year long. Do you have a pipeline? You should. How do you put it together? How do you maintain it? Those are the kind of tips that we're going to be walking through. And then finally, organizing your FY21 playbook. We all need some semblance of a playbook, some plan for this fiscal year that we are already into the second quarter of. And during that time, we're going to be discussing contract opportunities and how they're being impacted by the new administration. But before we can get to any of our objectives, we all need a sort of situation report. So here is the 2021 SITREP as it stands. Knowing where you are, government contracting, politics, the two are interconnected. With a new administration and a party flip, there was no way we weren't going to be impacted by this election in the last year. Our industry is so heavily impacted by the ebb and the flow of the federal landscape. This is just how we work. If there's Any sort of administration, policy, regulations that are coming through, that directly impacts us as government contractors. And we have already seen a flurry of impactful agency and regulation updates and executive orders just during the transition. And even before that, government contracting is actually riding a 10-year high of discretionary procurement spending. A lot of people come into this industry and they think that there's money to be printed, and we don't blame them because the numbers are very appealing. Just within the past 10 years, we actually did a deep dive into the spending trends, and we're able to see that between fiscal year 17 and today, discretionary appropriations have actually increased 30%. And that is not even including all of the COVID spending that happened in the last fiscal year, which equated to about $1.76 trillion. A lot of money spent on that. So 30%, not even within the past 10 years, but just within the past 3 fiscal years. Defense spending has grown more than 17%, and non defense has grown more than 15%. That's how we get about that 30% increase. You can see it's not just super heavy defense or super heavy civilian, it is a very healthy mix of the two. Federal spending is expected to total 21% of the GDP in FY20, and revenue is projected at approximately 16.4. So if you really pull back and think about it, the government contracting industrial base is actually about 25% of the United States economic welfare. So all that being said, there is money out there, and we don't want you to leave any left on the table. And so that's why we're going to talk about how to, at first, position yourself for success. We need to understand our environment. So position yourself for success. What do we mean? Positioning yourself is all about a semblance of situational awareness. And when we talk to people about this, this is a step that a lot of people want to skip. They don't want to try to understand the federal acquisition life cycle. They say, why do I need to know that? I'm not on the government side. Why do I need to understand their procurement cycle? We do something different. They don't want to talk about congressional appropriation status. I know that these words sound really fancy, but they impact all of us in the landscape in which we roam. And they need to understand things like the federal fiscal year calendar and spending trends, things of which that I've already mentioned, right? We're in Q2 and yet we're in January. What does that mean? Government spends money differently. You need to understand a federal buyer's budget, when money is available, and when they are likely to spend it in order to be successful. And then we also want you to conduct an organizational audit and assessment of yourself. That's the self-assessment and understanding your value proposition, because you need to understand what you're selling, why it's valuable, and who will value it. So it's really situational awareness is external, organizational audit and assessment is internal. So now Amber's going to help us walk through the overview of the federal acquisition lifecycle that's behind us. I'll give a little bit of a recap of this. You can't see the whole image, and you don't necessarily have to. You just have to understand that the government goes through a plan, develop, execute type of timeline when it comes to putting together the contracts for industry to bid on. Amber?
Absolutely. So, depending on the requirements, some of these processes that you're seeing and these different, have different type of time lengths, right? If the government's looking for a trucking requirement, or, I saw that there was a few vendors on here that work in the railroad and transportation. These timelines look a little bit different for you, right? Kind of longevity of the requirement is typically known. It's more about how are they going to acquire it, when are they going to acquire it, and for how long, and what do those materials look like. For services firms, this process is a little bit longer. If it's a larger requirement, what agency are they, what do they need it for? Who's using it? What type of labor categories do they need to fill? And what, vehicle are they using? And is this a duplicative contract? Same with IT, sellings and commodities and things like that. That same type of processes here, where it's kind of determining duplicative contracts. Does it already exist? That's what we're seeing a lot in the government these days. The government's been buying things for a very long time. Duplication is you can't avoid it. The government is now trying to get a little bit smarter about that these days, and using things like category management to look at these. And we're not going to really dive into that, but just to understand that the government's trying to get a handle on how many things and what they're buying and where are they buying them from, so that they can manage the money and they can manage the people and these types of services. But really, on the graphic that you're seeing, and what we're really just trying to convey to you, is understand that the process when selling to the government is not just you have a need, I have something, let's do a deal. That's not the way it works here in the federal government. There are processes that are legally required that have to be followed. And while some may seem a little bit grayer than others or a little bit shorter than others, you need to understand the types of steps your customer has to go through and why selling to the federal government is not just, boom, we got a deal.
In that same vein, you have to understand congressional appropriation status. Now, Lisa, what does Congress have to do with me as a government contractor? The answer is literally everything. You have to understand that discretionary dollars are allocated based on Congress's priorities, and that dictates what each federal agency will spend their money on each year. So like Amber said, it's not just, hey, I have this great need, or I have this great product or service, you have this need, they match, let's do a deal. Because if that agency, if that office doesn't have those programs, those missions, those initiatives literally funded, then you are not going to be able to acquire a contract. And there's a lot of numbers that float around every year, and this is what makes the industry look so appealing to people, right? It's I can't remember what the new number is. I think it may be like $5 trillion is spent on the government each year, and everyone goes, "Wow, I can definitely get a portion of $5 trillion. I can get a piece of that pie." But what they don't understand is the different types of spending through the government. So down here on these charts, we have these pie charts that show mandatory spending versus discretionary spending. And government contractors, we tend to fall within the discretionary spending pool of things, which is really 30% of the total of government spending. And then if you look over at the next pie chart, the discretionary spending is further broken down into additional sections like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And so all of a sudden, that percentage starts shrinking. That being said, there's still a lot of money.
I was going to say, really, if this year's budget was about let's go with, $1.5 trillion. Let's just put it at that round number. The actual discretionary spending fund that is available to the government contracting community is $633 billion. So that's your pile of money on the table, right? And that's broken out into different stuff, and we're going to get into that. But 633 billion is what we're all working with for this fiscal year, and that's plenty to go around.
Nothing to snuff at. And that money gets spent at different times, or there are different focuses for a government contractor throughout the course of the year. So government, when it comes to procurement, we talk in terms of the fiscal year, FY, whereas a lot of other folks want to talk calendar year. Our government federal fiscal year calendar looks like this. We have the new year start in October through December for Q1, moving into Q2, 3, and 4. The end of the fiscal year is in September. You'll see a lot of rhetoric about Q4 spending out there, especially if you're on LinkedIn, or even the news organizations pick this up all the time, right? There's a Q4 spending spree, and that sounds really sexy. And we get it. A lot of money does get spent in Q4, but we will caution you with that rhetoric is that most of that money, when you dive into the research, is actually spent on contractors where they already have a footprint with a customer. It's a lot of sole sources. It's a lot of modifications to contracts versus just doing new work. So that being said, the reason that I bring that up is because you as the government contractor need to be really specific during the time frame that you're working on what efforts you are moving on. So, Q1, we're doing some research. We're trying to figure ourselves out. Where are we going to be going within this next fiscal year? Q2, today, this is all about general business development and capture. Are you planning on expanding your portfolio? Is there a new client that you want to target? Is there a new service line that you want to release? Start doing that sort of capture, that preliminary business development. Whereas Q3 is very laser focused. This is, what you want and you are going after it. And then Q4 is more about direct selling to your existing client base versus going after new work. And of course, planning for the next fiscal year.
And just to touch on that, while we're going into fiscal year spending trends with that calendar, right, and that 633 billion we touched on, and we're going to talk about these impacts a little bit later in our presentation. But just so you guys, you might be sitting here and be like, crap, we're behind. There's already so much to do. They've already started spending. We're already in quarter 2. What do we do? just so you guys know, Congress is supposed to have a budget passed and in place by that October date. They don't. They typically don't. They never, I don't think in the last 30 years have they. But since they just got it, they typically get it passed around December, January. I mean, sometimes we've seen it go into March. It typically takes about 2 months for that money to be released through the Department of Treasury. So that 633 billion that has been appropriated is really not going to be released to federal agencies until mid-March. And we're going to touch on that. But if you're sitting here freaking out already, know that that money hasn't even been put out there yet.
Exactly. I think on one of the next slides, or one of the slides in the future, we're going to talk about, what percentage we are in terms of our spend already in this administration. And I think, not to give anything away, I believe it's something like 9%. So we'll get into that in a bit. But for now, federal fiscal year spending trends, the seasonal trends that occur within a single year can be seen on this graph here. Amber, do you want to walk through what we're looking at for 2020?
Absolutely. And I think I saw a question, Judy, correct me if I'm wrong. Someone just asked, like, can we explain the peaks that we're seeing in April? And this is just this chart needs to be updated a tad bit. This is back when they were finally releasing fiscal year 20 numbers. Obviously, September is a lot higher these days now, but it takes a while for the government to enter money into their checkbook and for us to get those numbers. So that's why you see the data looking this way. So I want everyone to imagine this with September being like pretty much higher than April. But the reason that we see these peaks and these valleys, especially in March and April, is because exactly what we just explained is money isn't released until about a month or two after it's appropriated. So you see governments kind of putting out market research. A lot of what we're seeing now, right, pre-solicitation notices are really, that's what's happening around January into February. Around middle of February, they start kind of revving up those engines, and then they start making those awards into March and April. And that's really when you get the first influx of money. The second influx of money typically comes around June, at start of July, which is when you start seeing those things kind of pump up. And then if there's any extra money left, or if money didn't come through one of those pipes in the first two rounds, that's when you see it in Q4. And that's when you see agencies just trying to spend and get it out the door. Places like State Department that work in a really interesting type of way that they are funded, they sometimes don't get their money until around July of every fiscal year. And so knowing and understanding how those different types of funding helps you guys understand when money can be coming in if you're doing things like business, projections and revenue. Not every month is the same in government. It's a pretty steady stream of opportunities to bid on. But knowing when your money will come in or when awards will be made, right? It's typically around these time areas.
That's a really good distinction, because a lot of people, Amber and I have been proposal managers for the last decade. We try not to be anymore because we realize it's, hell on the skin if we were to do that full time. So it's a joke. But, so people always ask us, well, what's proposal season? And we'd always say proposal season is all year. Proposal season is 365 days. There is no proposal season. But there is award season, and that's what you're seeing here. Like Amber said, there's always work to bid on, but not necessarily always work getting awarded. So now that you know that, you have to really start performing your own self-assessment on where you are in the process, and do you have the resources in place? Because it's not enough just to know about these numbers, right? We have to then start putting this into action. But you have to think about what quarter of the fiscal year you're in. Amber mentioned right now, look, there's plenty to do in Q2. Just be aware of it, and your tactics will change in Q2 than they will in, say, Q4. Do you have business and proposal dollars available? B&P is huge. It's necessary. It costs money to go after these contracts. And that's something that we have to explain to especially people that are new in this industry. Federal proposals are not like grant proposals. They're not commercial proposals. There is a lingua franca there. There is a process. There is different expectations on what these look like. It is a different language. It's an art form. And so you typically will need to have B&P dollars available. That, or you have to start thinking of your own time in terms of B&P dollars, because how long is it going to take you to put together this bid? So that's why you need to be selective on opportunities that you're going to go after. In the same vein, do you have dedicated business development and capture professionals at your disposal? Who's doing this opportunity research? Who's looking at the data like we presented before to try to identify what agencies you should be targeting? And then from there, realizing if it's a realistic or good spend of your resources to do any of the following. There's responding to market research. A lot of people have different opinions on RFIs, market research, sources sought, those kind of communications with the federal government, which for those of you who don't know, if any of those come through an open source location like beta.sam.gov, it means that the government is looking for information and not necessarily that there is a contract that's going to be moving forward. And so that's why a lot of companies are like, well, why would I respond to an RFI? There's no return on investment because there's no direct dollars coming back to me here. It seems like a wasted effort to put together this whole document to submit. We don't necessarily believe that. We think that it's really important to communicate with your potential customers and your current customers and let them know what you have to work with. You can provide things like acquisition strategy, opinions, and try to shape the opportunity that way. Again, a lot of people think that if it's already come out under RFI, then somebody else has already shaped the opportunity. And so it's best to not utilize your resources. But again, it depends on if this is a good and realistic spend for you and your company. Same thing for marketing to federal clients for unsolicited requirements. By that, we mean putting together white papers and sending it to your customer base, which is essentially saying, hey, this is what makes us so great. You haven't put out any public need. There's no market research. There's no sources sought. There's no RFI, but we think that this can help you based on the research that we've done. And you can actually put in like an acquisition strategy in there as well. You can encourage them to utilize a specific schedule or IDIQ or some sort of GWAC that you're on. Again, you want to make sure that you're bolstering your own position for these. But just saying, hey, I know you have these needs. You can find these needs. We're going to be discussing later. But the government does a good job of communicating their pain points to you. And so that's what a white paper would be for. Same thing with looking at teaming opportunities to potentially fill a niche area. Amber mentioned category management, and another trend that's similar but not the same is a lot of contract requirements are starting to get consolidated, right, Amber? This is a huge deal. Whereas before, you might have used to look for a professional services contract under marketing. But now marketing might be a small component of a much larger contract. And so in order to go after that, you would need to look for teaming opportunities in order to fill that niche for another company. And then same thing into looking to diversify your portfolio. Is it a good use of your resources to go someplace beyond your existing customer base? And then it's all about you, your value proposition. What does your organization do well? Because I'm sorry to break it to you, but you can't be everything to everyone. And I say that, and I wish that Amber and I would practice what we preach, because that's a problem for a lot of small business owners, right? We say, oh, no, we can absolutely do that. But what we're telling you when it comes to targeting specific federal customers is that you really do need to pull back and focus on 1 to 2 functional areas that you can strongly market. Make sure that you are marketing it in a way where the government understands too. That's not something that we wrote here. But once you've identified your functional areas, especially if you're a firm that is more used to the commercial side of the house, do your research and make sure that the same terminology is being used on the government side. Right, Amber, we've talked about like translations. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Can you? Where it's like, this is a commercial term, but this is actually how they look for it in the government.
Yeah, well, there's so people get confused, especially when you're new in the market. Is the government will put out a request for non-personnel services, but they're asking for people, and you might be a little confused, saying, "But they said non-personnel." That's really the difference. There's a bunch of different niche translation differences, but at the end of the day, understand that when you're selling to if I'm talking to people that are more in the services or the business of putting people on into jobs, where those types of needs, the government doesn't like to look at it as them hiring you to hire people to do the job. You're supporting them with a service. You're supporting their initiatives. You're not really, they don't like the terms staffing. Staffing is a no-no.
So what is it, augmentation?
Yeah, you're
staff
providing human capital augmentation. You are supporting their mission and things like that, right? So that's it's knowing how you're reading these things, how the government refers to them, because at the end of the day, the government is not allowed to buy services that are inherently government functions, and that's a whole nother can of worms. But that's the way that you look at it, where it's like you are augmenting the government, you are not directly replacing their functions.
Right. So as part of your value proposition, you should really start to think about what customer spaces you are currently in, where you are walking the halls. And now that is in quotes because we hate the term walking the halls. What it really means.
You also can't walk the halls right now.
You also can't walk the halls right now. Also, how do you shape an opportunity where you're not walking the halls? Like, you need to be badged in order to walk these alleged halls. And how do you have a relationship before you're badged? There's a lot of ways that you can do that. But pulling back, it is strategically smart to think about where your current footprint is before you start diversifying to other client bases. It's easier to drill down than it is to move wide. And when you do that, really thinking about your strongest past performance references, because yes, you need past performance to work with the government. I have not seen a single bid where you haven't had to show some semblance of work that you've done before. If you're completely new to the market, you can do this either by, sometimes you can include personal past performance, not all the time, and always ask the question. Never assume it can be personal past performance. But sometimes you can do that. And oftentimes you can use subcontractor past performance. Again, make sure it is clear. And so that's ways to build past performance as well. So again, this current environment that we're in, definitely try to leverage where your footprint is. If you are brand new, don't just say you want to work with the government. That is my pet peeve. If you email Amber and I and you say, I want to work with the government, I'm going to say, okay, who in the government? There are some, pick an agency, and then beyond there, pick the offices that you're interested in. Drill down to the procurement shops, all the way down to the contracting officer that you want to work with. Do not just tell me you want to work with the government. You are going to be shooting a fish in the ocean, which I guess you could still get a few, but it's going to be a lot more difficult. It's a much wider pool. And then think about if you have any GSA schedules, GWACs, BPAs, IDIQs, or subcontracts that can help you fast track potential requirements. But however, yes, these things are helpful, but don't be a company that just has a trophy case of IDIQs, because those trophies, just like when you did soccer in elementary school and you kept them on your shelf for the next 15 years, they don't do anything unless you do something with them. And I might have just given away what my room looked like as an adolescent. So, they can be really important and helpful to help narrow the pool of who you're competing against. But always remember that these big IDQs, like right now, everyone's talking about COSP4, right? And a lot of people want to get on COSP4 that Amber and I believe have no business getting on COSP4 because it's kind of the hot topic right now. But if you're not going to be able to use it, you're not going to be able to go after the task orders. It doesn't really do much for you. But they can be helpful to help identify how the government can actually find and leverage you. If you go to an agency and say, hey, I'm on this schedule, this is going to be easier for you to put out this opportunity through this schedule, then by all means, that's definitely a way to understand your value proposition to your customer. And then identifying your targets. You have to know who in the government has, buys, or needs your product or service. Even beyond what I had said before of agency, office, procurement, this is now you have to think of the contracting officer. You have to think about your stakeholders, the end users, the people that are, but then actually on top of that, the people that are actually going to hold the purse strings to be able to award you a contract. In a little bit, we're going to talk about those types of people and how, unfortunately, they're not always the same person. A lot of people will say, well, I know the program manager or I know the CIO on this program, and that is all fine and dandy. Name recognition is huge, and any sort of ally that you have that's already internal is only going to help you. However, if you don't have spending authority, you are not necessarily the target for capture efforts. Amber said so as much to somebody at the GSA once. We were not invited back. Uh, so right from there, understand that right now in this environment, it's weird and people are working in a very difficult environment. We're all from home and we all have different challenges. So when you are identifying your targets and reaching out to them, make sure that you're not looking to just overtly sell, look to listen. You know, Judy made a good point about a video that I also saw on LinkedIn where the person said, don't go to your customer and say, how can I help you? Go to your customer and say, this is how I can help you, or I can help you buy. Understanding agencies, departments, offices, their budgets, missions, goals, and pain points. I know this sounds like a lot of work, but this is the sort of research that you need to do before you reach out to these people and say, hey, money, please. You need to understand their goals and objectives to solve their pain points. And so people will say, well, how do I know somebody's pain points? I'm not a mind reader. There's this beautiful thing about the federal government where there's a lot of mandates for transparency. And so they do communicate frequently, not all in one place, not in areas where it's actually easy to navigate the website. They're all extremely clunky, but there are places where you can find this sort of information. You can look on industry day slides that they post on things like beta.sam.gov, small business roundtable, any sort of communication that they do, their own websites, their press releases. You can, if you really want to get fancy, you can dive into the GAO or OIG recommendations where they've said as a nonpartisan or by third party system, they say, hey, these are the recommendations that we'd like you to meet over the next year. This is where there are issues within your organization, your agencies. And pull that out. You can go into congressional documents and you can go into the legislation. You can be like Amber and wade through 5,000 pages of the omnibus. Nobody's like Amber. So, but you can still find that sort of information. It is out there. When you are identifying targets, you should think of easy ways that you would be able to assist them. And some examples are government agencies have socioeconomic goals that they are encouraged to meet. They do not have to meet, they're not mandated to meet them, but it's still a selling point if you say, hey, agency, I see that you have this percentage that you're encouraged to give contracts to hub zones and you are only at 2% instead of 5%. Guess what? I'm a hub zone. That's a selling point. You can walk through simplified acquisitions with them and say, hey, this is a much easier way for you to provide me a contract versus going through the whole rigmarole of a proposal process. And as mentioned before, GAO or OIG recommendations that you can help them meet. Amber, did I miss anything?
No, and we're going to talk about how to apply this, looking at the detailed forecast coming up in the administration opportunities and how you can go ahead and apply a lot of these lessons learned and really find out the way that the administration, the incoming, is leveraging these tools and how they're messaging their requirements. So we'll definitely be touching on those real soon.
Yes. As Amber mentioned, this is all kind of just the front matter. That was the situational awareness portion of this. Now
you gotta know how you're going to sell and who you're going to find before you go to this administration and say, give me money.
Exactly. And so now that we have understood that, it's time to dive deeply into the research. So the first of which is strategize your sales tactics. And Amber and I always hear the phrase, you need to pay for government contract intelligence. And we believe it's one of the biggest lies in our industry. And this is coming from people that sell government contract market intelligence. We don't say that you need to buy it. It does make your life easier, but this information is out there. And a lot of commercial firms will have you believe that this information that they've pulled it's the only way that you can see it if it's behind this paywall. But there is so much intelligence that you can just be Googling on your own. And we're going to be going through some of them now. So some ideas are investigating industry job postings. If you are trying to figure out which one of your competitors are going after the same bid as you, look on their open job recs. You would be shocked. If you're knowledgeable about a solicitation and the key personnel that they are requiring in that solicitation, it's pretty obvious when one of your competitors has an open rec for the same position on their website. Mentioned before, scrutinizing federal documentation, which we're going to talk about on the next slide. Amber's going to dive into that. There's federal government trackers and tools. Social media and federal communication platforms. Social media, this is not just your targeted millennials saying, we love social media. It's such a treasure trove right now. Um, Rules have changed within the last decade when it comes to government employees communicating through things like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Now, there are some contracting officers on LinkedIn that will literally release opportunities on LinkedIn, and that you'll see it there first, or Twitter. I thought Amber was crazy when she told me to get on Twitter. Twitter is full of government employees, and
And LinkedIn is full. I know Judy provides a lot of this training as well. I think there's like what, over 7,000 contracting officers on LinkedIn.
2.1 million federal employees. And you have to understand that your federal buyer is actually players at 5 different layers. So there's no one person pretty much everywhere you want to do business.
Exactly. And we're touching on the administration and we're going to get to that, but a lot of the new administration leadership are on LinkedIn and they're communicating with vendors, and it's a great way to make an introduction. I think I saw a question that we'll definitely get to about, how to break the ice and how to not be nervous, right? And we'll talk about that because I've been there. It's terrifying. You have no idea what to say. It's like going on a date and you've no idea what you're doing. And social media is a great way to break that ice. It's a great way to see what they're into, get their kind of their taste and their feel for what's going on, what they're sharing. People share a lot on social media these days. And you can direct message and connect with these, and it's a great way to break the ice.
And also leveraging your on-site personnel to gather intelligence respectfully. That's another tactic that you can use. Amber, we have these resources for research. Can you just go like quick and dirty through these? Because we got a lot to get through.
Yeah, we'll definitely, we'll definitely go through on how to use these things. Budget and performance documentation is something that we'll definitely be touching on when we start talking about the forecast for this administration, the opportunities that are coming up, because that's where we got our information. And that's what we're going to be coming to you guys with. GAO material is really helpful. And like as Lisa touched on, finding out where the government's mandating, hey, you need to fix this. So if you're in transportation, DOT has a fantastic plethora of reports out of GAO saying different things they need to fix about their transportation systems, anywhere from infrastructure to their planning to their materials. If you're in IT and services, there is I don't know, there's no end to how many different IT recommendations there are on there. Services, governance, you name it, it's on there. Public category management dashboards and analytics. The government's now finally being more transparent about how they're bundling these requirements. GSA Interact is another great tool. It's kind of like a chat room for GSA vendors, and they put some really great information out there. Not to mention, it's another place where you can directly interact with GSA contracting officers and officials. They have their own profiles there, so you can comment and chat and talk to them. It's great. And then Calc is a great tool for anyone that's trying to understand your pricing in government. And there's a ton more resources that I'm sure Judy covers a lot in her training, but these are just a few to really help give you some sources and some good brainstorming, right, when trying to figure out how you're going to start that conversation with the government.
Absolutely. And once you've utilized those resources and you've done your research, we know that the actual tried and true way of shaping an opportunity is through direct customer communication. You need to build these relationships with folks. That is the best way to shape, which is why we discuss building an actionable communications plan that you then track. So it should be targeted. And it needs to be for stakeholders that will benefit from your value proposition. And the stakeholders are agencies, offices. You can do direct opportunities or prime contractors for you to team with. We mentioned before understanding your decision maker and who you need to talk to. Who are you trying to target? Who is your customer and who is performing the work? Again, unfortunately, these can usually be multiple parties. You have your requirements owners that are going to be actually on the ground. You have your influencers. So, like, requirements owners might be that PM, influencers might be that CIO, but the procurement and acquisition professionals is who we encourage you to target in your communications campaign. But before you reach out to any of these people, I mentioned this idea of a campaign. I would like to stress that this should be a formal plan that you have, and it should be shared. It should be disseminated throughout your team. And you should do things like track follow-up emails, how often you reach out to somebody, what the outcome of meetings are. Make sure that you've documented all results. That's at the end here. It says stay organized, but just right up front. Do your homework too. We know a lot of contracting officers that hate it if you just send your capabilities statement to them and say, hi, my name is so-and-so. How can I help you? The homework is what every piece of this that we've discussed already, that's where that comes from. That's what that crazy research is. That's what looking for keywords is about. That's what understanding their GAO mandates and requests and requirements. That's what the research is. That's the homework. Figure out what these people have bought historically. Sometimes historic purchasing and buying is actually really indicative of how they're going to spend in the future. Not always, but sometimes. Their mission and their upcoming opportunities. You should know what other opportunities that contracting officer is responsible for. Side note, we have an interactive search platform for opportunities through the Pulse. And one of our things that we are able to do through it is actually search by contracting officer. And you can see all of the opportunities that they are currently, they have out on the street or in pre-solicitation or awarded. So, that's a really important thing to do. Have your homework. Amber mentioned before, online dialogue is great. We say be appropriately active on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And I hate to have to say appropriately, but you see the people out there. And that's how you can interact with people. Share relevant content, write that content, put your white papers out online, let them see it, let them see your marketing material, have your marketing material really sing to a government client, your customer. Understanding schedules is huge. Know the best times to call or email or video conference, especially during these times at home. Be pleasantly persistent. That's Amber's mantra right there. Follow up on unanswered emails. Leave a voicemail if they don't answer the phone, and then email a follow-up, 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 follow-up. It can get excessive. And again, Amber and I are business partners, and sometimes we'll have sales calls and I'm like, oh God, they didn't answer. Let's not bother them. And Amber she's, hey, I just want to follow up. Hey, I just want to bring this to the top of your inbox. Hey, I just want to see if we can do this action. And sometimes I sit there and my anxiety inside goes, oh my God, Amber, stop. But then all of a sudden we'll have made a sale, and it's insane to me. So the system works. It works in government and it works, business to business too. Make it as easy as possible, especially if you're new. Make sure that SAM profile is up to date. Don't have inconsistencies in that profile and on your website. And don't force your federal customers to do the work for you. We mentioned that before too. Make sure your NAICS codes are on SAM.gov. Make sure that you're doing business as all your naming conventions are the same and it's not difficult to find you. As I mentioned before, stay organized. And then from there, once you have this campaign of, communications campaign already, you also have to have a sales pipeline. And the two can be conflated sometimes. Sometimes it's all one document. It really depends on who you are, your organization. But a pipeline, if you don't have one, an opportunity pipeline to track opportunities and their potential buyers, you need to get one yesterday. Because this tool helps you identify the opportunities and buyers that are relevant to your organization's capabilities and sales efforts. It can help you develop and maintain relationships with federal buyers and industry personnel. This is something that we discussed before. It drives your customer engagements and sales strategies and can assist in shaping opportunities by responding and following up on market research. If you've submitted an RFI, if you've submitted against a sources sought or market research, make sure that you track that, because we always talk about cold calling, but we always prefer you to do a lukewarm touch and a lukewarm reach. And what better way to reach out to somebody than say, hey, I just want to follow up on that unanswered RFI. That RFI was submitted, a couple months ago, and I just wanted to see where we were in the process.
Or is it still a priority? Is this still an initiative within your agency? We talk about this new administration coming in, which we're just going to be getting to just in the next slide. But some of these things carry over, and there are some market research or RFIs that haven't been touched, right? That maybe because funding ran out. It is a great idea to use that as a point of contact to reach out and say, there's nothing better in sales than to know if something's dead, right? So you can all move on. So why not pull out those piles of sources, thoughts, and RFIs and say, hey, is this still an initiative? Is this still, something that this agency is looking to spend money on? And if they say no, great. You still have an introduction, you still have a capability, and you ask them what's the next initiative? What are you looking at? And it's a great way to turn that kind of, no, this is dead to, all right, well, what's next?
Absolutely. When you have a sales pipeline, we have 5 tips that we're going to be walking through on the next slide. The first of which is to determine a front of funnel. Sometimes it's the hardest step just to get started in an opportunity pipeline in government contracting because different organizations will have a different front of funnel. And by that, we mean literally in a funnel, it's the widest part, it's the mouth, it's the thing that starts catching and filtering down just right away. Does time frame matter to you the most? Is it the contract value? Some people won't put contracts under a certain dollar threshold in their pipeline because it's just not worth it for them. Others say, hey, these onesie, twosie, 10K to, 50K opportunities, this is great. This is my sweet spot. I'm going to pick this down from down here. Agency sometimes is what matters the most if you're going to be really specific on your target customers. Functional areas sometimes, hey, I don't care which agency I'm working within as long as it's all under, information technology, which that would be insane. And then NAICS and PSE codes. What is your front of funnel? And then when you have a pipeline, make sure you design it around a usable format. We have seen a lot of pipelines out there, and don't just pick up somebody else's pipeline format because we all read things differently. We all interpret data differently. And, you have these sort of tabular formats where you're reading left to right, but then the things on the left aren't necessarily the most important pieces of information. And so things get missed or glossed over. Just an aside, think about reorganizing your sales pipeline if it's not working for you. Matching your company's capabilities to the opportunities to ensure they are realistic. So this is beyond NAICS and PSC codes, right? You have to get down into the scope of work and say, is this what I can perform against these requirements? And then populate the pipeline through online research. There are so many places that you can find opportunities. It's not just beta.sam.gov. It's not, just paying for a GovWin or a BGov or, GovTribe. They're all great tools. They're out there. They do the job, but there are so many different sources, and we have not found one of these systems that actually pulls from all the sources out there. I believe Amber at her last count said there was something like 86 sources where they announce opportunities. Grants.gov is great. It's not just for your not-for-profits. Obviously, GSA eBuy, those schedules, federal agency forecasts, different ones for different agencies, all on a different website, and NSA ARC, which is classified and unclassified.
So Lisa, since we're getting up, right, we're at the hour, we've jam-packed this thing. We got like 10 minutes left. So I know that everyone's getting the slides. I don't know if we want to jump to the administration part, right? So we're almost there, bidding within 10, looking at the administration part, right? So yes. We'll just jump right in there. So this administration, right? There's a lot going on. There's already been a ton that's happened, and we're just now getting into the mix of things. So right now we're only at 9% of our FY21 discretionary spending, which means there's a lot of money on the table, right? That's 633 billion that we just discovered, right? There's only 9% of that gone. That's because typically because Congress doesn't really get to do their job until January of getting the budget done. A lot of what the federal agencies do is they typically start beginning to plan based on the presidential budget. So if you might be wondering how do federal agencies spend if there's no budget? That's because they look at the presidential budget, and that's when they start to kind of forecast. And then basically, the Congress comes in and says, okay, I'm going to need you to squish that budget a little bit more. And they're enough into that fiscal year where that is doable. But this year, the presidential budget actually requested a lot less than what Congress gave. And we saw there's about 15 federal agencies that got an increase in funding for FY21, which means there's not only, as Lisa covered in the beginning of this, we're writing a 10-year high. And this fiscal year, there is more money on the table. And that's not including anything that is a pandemic package or COVID requirements or anything like that. This is just strictly the omnibus spending is giving 15 federal agencies more money this year to do more with.
Right. And you can see those are all civilian besides Department of Defense, which obviously wraps in all of the defense ones. This is a great image right here because I mentioned before Amber dug through all 5,000 pages of the omnibus because she is Amber and we all bow down to her. And she did a word map demonstrating the requirements trends that you'll see. And by this, we mean these terms came up again and again and again, which means that they are federal priorities. Obviously, research and development, that's a pretty standard one. That's the biggest. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, we can't get away from it. But things like public health, renewable energy, risk management, water resources, rural development. These are other terms, these are other scope trends that you're going to end up seeing as we discuss here for civilian and defense. These scope trends came out of the omnibus. And so you will probably see an influx in proposals that or solicitations that mention these terms between civilian and defense. These are the hot buttons right now.
And these are the terms when Lisa and I, when we began our presentation, Lisa was talking about, say you're a commercial firm or say you're new to the federal government, making sure that your terms match. And unfortunately, sometimes that also means making sure that your terms match Congress's interpretation of those terms, right? So you're kind of playing a lingua franca game with three different angles. And so it's interesting every year to see how the government changes in their reference to different technologies. Let's take some high level ones, right? So artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, things like that. The government used to refer to them as kind of separate entities. Now we're seeing Congress and the government refer to those things as emerging technologies or emerging capabilities, where they're kind of imagine it as an umbrella where the rest of these kind of live under. So that's where that's kind of looking at that when you're searching for opportunities. Say you're in machine learning or you're in quantum computing, if you are, God bless you. But when you're searching for requirements, also make sure you're searching emerging technology because you might be missing something. Right. Same thing with cybersecurity and modernization. A lot of these things that they're changing, there's IT modernization, but now the civilian agencies and Congress are really starting to look at, management systems and service operations and optimizations, right? That's where data center optimization, supply chain, rural development. So understanding how these words and how you're supposed to search them and really the way that Congress refers them is really going to help you build your pipeline and speak that language to know what really the priorities are for those federal agencies. And as you guys saw on the word map, right? The big priorities for Congress. That doesn't mean that there's not money for different other types of initiatives, but those, especially right now, as money starts coming out, those congressional initiatives, especially with the new administration, new leadership, is what they're going to be focusing on. Their focus might change a little bit later, but right now, the Congress's priorities and the presidential priorities are going to be your federal agencies' priorities right now.
Absolutely. If you want more information on this type of what we're covering right now, what was on the omnibus, those kind of scope trends and everything, the Pulse actually did just release 2 special reports on the federal directory discretionary directives. So we talk through actually each agency's favorite acquisition vehicles to just help you understand where the opportunities will be competed. We have those reports on our website. Our members get them for free, and we're about to disseminate those reports with Summit Insight after this webinar in a joint blog. But just so you can see right up front what it's looking like right now, GSA IT 70 and PSS schedule and NASA SOUP are the overwhelming favorites. That's 71% usage across 19 federal agencies that we looked at. Whereas OASIS and the OASIS Small Business might only take up 3%, but they are the primary favorite of the Department of Defense. So that's what that looks like. Other opportunities and competition that are out there, the agency regulation and updates and EOs that have happened that are affecting government contractors are all listed out here now. We don't necessarily have time to go through them, but just know. I was
going to say, if I could touch on like 2 that are big.
Get it, girl.
Big deal. All right, so there's 2 that are kind of really big, or more than 2, but there's a few, right? The if we're talking about kind of federal agencies changing their structure, and if you work and if the Pentagon is kind of your target, they've gotten rid of this chief management officer position and have decided to disseminate those roles and responsibilities across the landscape. So any type of requirements that were there for transformation or optimization prior to this happening, those are kaput. The government has scrapped those and left those on the floor. There's other things where the rule of two, using before multiple award IDIQ contracts. So that is a really big deal because the small business rule of two now needs to be used for MA IDIQs to procure services, and that's been made known in the court system. So that's a very large deal. And then also, but on the flip side, if you're an SDVUSB and you do work with the VA, there is recently a ruling that came out as well that said that that's not applicable to GSA pricing. So the rule of, which is very confusing, we provided a link in the slides if you get those, but basically what they came out and said that if you're the VA and you're doing the rule of two and it's under a GSA schedule, that rule does not always have to be applied. So there's been some really interesting parts that have come out, not just from the new administration, but from the government. And then the last biggest one is everyone's favorite is LPTA. There has been a ruling that has come out recently that said that
LPTA, please, what is it?
Lowest price technically acceptable, which means that the way that the government would choose to do their work at times would be based on the lowest price. And that's not good for pretty much anyone, not even the government. But what has happened is the government came out basically saying that in order to do an LPTA contract, the agency has to provide a justification. And so how that helps you as you're getting to the market is if you see an LPTA contract and there's no justification provided for it, reach out to your government customer and ask them because they might not be aware of this rule. And so you might be able to teach them, right? Educating our customers on this rule so that you can get either a better price contract or a better opportunity. And you're also getting to know them more and educate them, which who wouldn't want that?
Absolutely. So Amber already mentioned as new leadership comes in, transformation, reorganization requirements hit the cutting room floor. We are expecting a spending increase to start mid-March through the end of September. But we're not certain on FY22, so it could dampen FY21 obligations. And in the meantime, we can anticipate funding boosts in the area of healthcare, transportation, construction, and technology modernization, possibly through an additional COVID stimulus bill throughout the year. As I mentioned before, if you're looking for more information, we actually have these reports on our website. But besides that, we are at 3:01 and I'm surprised we got there. Thank you for holding on to your hats with us. We are the Pulse of GovCon. Judy, over to you.
The two of you are awesome. And I'm so impressed that you managed to move all the way through the material. A quick pause. If you need to drop, and there's really important stuff, including value links, bonuses and stuff. If you have to disappear, you will get the recording, but you want to hang out. And we have our guests can stay till about quarter after the hour to take some more questions. And we've got a couple of them are queued up. You can put other questions in the chat and we'll relay them. Any questions that you put in the chat and we are not able to answer in real time, we'll forward those to our guests and we'll do our best to answer those. So we covered a lot. We talked about contract opportunities that are impacted by the new administration, how to identify who is buying what you sell, the key elements to building an actionable communications plan, and how to ensure that your sales pipeline works all year long. Now, real quick, this is a critical, important thing. I had said that I was going to ask you what action, what one thing do you commit to taking now because you are on this webinar? What one thing are you going to do based on what you learned? Put it in the chat. I want to see that. All right. In the meantime, while you do that, there are 4 keys that unlock federal wins. And you're going to do those things whether you work with Amber and Lisa, or you work with me, or you work with your procurement technical assistance center, or you stay at home alone in your fuzzy slippers doing telepathic communication. You're going to do these 4 things. You're going to define and identify who buys what you do. You will learn the federal sales game, what to do, what to say, and what to ask. You'll put together a systematic, methodical way to get in front of the right people at the right time. And you'll use the plan. Take rapid, consistent action to build relationships. I will also tell you this: 80% of government contractors are asking the wrong question. They're looking at this massive intelligence and going, what can I bid? Everything changes the moment you flip that over and start asking, who is my buyer? How can I get to know them? That is the journey that we take our clients on. Action time. What one action do you commit to and by when? Let's take a look and see in our chat what plans people have. Research, says Billy. Make a priority list. Vikram, research, research, research. Build my pipeline, says Grace. Yes, get to know what my customer wants, says David. Excellent. Research the budget, says Randy. Look for agencies that have initiative and funding for what I sell. Bravo. Mia says market research, pipeline, networking. Awesome. Bernadita says learn more about building my pipeline, my action step. Angela, yes, work on our pipeline. Stephanie, start developing a robust communications plan with a lot of help from someone. I like the sound of that. Angel, looking into the government accountability office and make it work for me. Bravo. Teresa says, get more focused. Yeah. Focus, 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 focus or go broke. Melissa says, refining my market research. Dwan's going to work on his pipeline. Sarah's going to get that social up and going. Yes. Excellent. 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 Fabulous. Look at these great actions. This is what we get up in the morning for, is to make this difference for you. Awesome. You are fabulous, all of you. So resources for you. And Heather Herbine, who's our moderator from the Summit Insight team, is going to start dropping links in the chat. So get ready to scoop them up. Here we go. Several people were asking, what do I do? How do I get in front of people? Getting in front of the right people sooner is the number one obstacle that government contractors say that failure to solve that problem will cost us anywhere from $1 million to $10 million in lost opportunity this year. Who's got your back? We do. To help you solve that problem, I've brought together a recorded lesson, how to win your meeting and get invited back, how to do it, what to do. How do you get through the door, get their attention? What do you do once you get the meeting? It's all here for you. There's the link. It is in the chat. Grab the link. I've built this for you. I can't work with everybody, but I want you to be successful. So that's the first one. Next, folks who want to know more about subcontracting. Our next webinar is going to be on February 25th with Maria Panichelli of Obermeyer. This webinar is going to cover essential issues that primes and subs have to keep in mind. The link is once again in the chat. We're going to have all of those in the follow-up email as well, but go grab the link, grab your seat. You know that we've got sessions packed full of value. Third, anybody want to practice the art of federal human connection? Talk to a real federal contracting officer, someone who sat in the chair. Join us on the second Wednesday of the month. Come together for government contracting is Conversations with Contracting Officers. William Randolph, CEO of Think Acquisition, former Navy and senior acquisition official in Homeland Security, and Kevin Hoey, who's a former Marine Corps colonel and spent 15 years in senior business development with a large prime. Those are our former contracting officers, and you can talk to them as part of our session. There's the link. Sign up and get notices for all of these sessions. We are now ready for Q&A. So we've got several questions that are coming up. And so let's see here. Yolanda, you were asking what tools and practice to use conversation to overcome nervousness so you don't look like a deer in the headlights. Your Procurement Technical Assistance Center, we've put the link a lot there. You have many former contracting officers there, probably in your community, and also sign up for Come Together. Yolanda asks, is there a software as a service you are using to house your contacts and email responses? What do you use or what do you recommend? What kinds of considerations, Amber and Lisa?
So we don't use anything right now. Because we're a small business. But what I have used before, and this person's gonna hate me because it's not technology, but I'm a person that learns by writing things down.
Mm-hmm.
When I used to do direct selling to the government, I had a shoebox that was organized from A to Z, and I had large cards where I wrote down the person's name, their contact information, and every time I had a meeting with them, I put the date, a summary of the meeting, I would put their contract, their like card on there as well. Because that's how I remember the last time I talked to them. And that actually helped me go through and understand the last time. Now I know people use things like Bullhorn, Excel, right? Salesforce. There are a ton of HubSpot is actually a great tool. I know that people use a lot. So there's a lot of good things. And if I could add on one point to that trick of how not to be a deer in the headlights is, remember they put on their pants just like you. They're people. They are us. They are people. So remember that if you're nervous, they're probably nervous too, or tired or exhausted, or they're probably thinking about a million other things going on at home, or they're screaming babies or kids or dogs, cats, anything. They're people.
Exactly right. And there is no one good answer. I will tell you this, that Heather Herbine and Leah Edwards, who are my team, they also have many years of working with government contractors. They also have a call agent program. If you are a smaller business, you're going, I just don't have time to smile and dial, qualify some appointments, line them up, and then I'll have those conversations. Drop a note, say, Heather, I need to talk to you. So, Heather, call me. Put that in the chat, and Heather Herbine will follow up with you. This is the business that one of my 1099 teams provides. That's what they do. I want to come back to this, though. It can take anywhere from 15 to 30 instances of contact to get from contact to contract. 15 to 30. Average unsuccessful struggling government contractor gives up after 4 or 5 messages maybe, or leaves 3 and then moves on. So the business goes to those who have enough focus to follow up politely, persistently, relentlessly. And that not the same, hi, it's me, will you call me? Hi, it's me, will you call me? No, it's more complicated than that. So building the art of federal human connection based on hard data, focus, and bringing micro wins, that is my profession. Bringing together data with the art of human connection into those personal relationships in a methodical way. If that sounds cool, then we need to talk, because that's where we specialize. Let's see, other questions coming up. Heather, are we seeing any other questions? Because we've got as well, our guests have been so generous. And so I want give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat. Did you find valuable things? Was your hour worthwhile here? Drop it in the chat. And what did you like best? Yes, says Mia. Oh, Bernadette, you want to know any tips for narrowing down our niche? You can find those in my book, Government Contracts Made Easier. That's because easy is fiction. You can find it on Amazon. And how to do that, you can find it here. And you can also ask for help at your Procurement Technical Assistance Center. If you're a one-man shop, to focus on teaming efforts with primes will not help you, because your primes are hideously risk averse. Their reputation is on the line. If you are a one-man shop and you believe that you are solving a problem that government buyers have, do your research, start talking to individual federal humans. If you need a strategy and support for doing the research and focus, Amber and Lisa have some tools that can help you. So check out what they have to offer, and also take a look at the Procurement Technical Assistance Center and their programs and resources near you. And you can pick up free chapter 1 of my book on my website. So these are all resources for you. Okay. Other questions? Drop in the chat. I think we've got another one from Angela. Here we go. Just a second here. Let's see here. Alex, is there a way to track micro purchases? You can track them all you like, but if you want to actually win one, go have conversations with your federal humans. And we've got a closing poll before you all go. Could you tell us a little bit about how many people in your company are involved in federal business development? Hang on a second here. We were going to do, there you go. Would you like us to contact you? Please let us know if you'd like the Pulse of GovCon to be in touch, or you'd like me to be in touch with you. So please check it off before you go, and we will get back in touch with you. Again, if you're still waiting here, and are you going to get the file? Are you going to get the recording? Yes, watch your email. You're going to get an email that has a link to a page where you can watch the recording and get the file with all this juicy, generous detail that Amber and Lisa have provided. Please check out their trial subscription to their membership platform. See how they can help you. All right. And so again, you can send all the emails you like, but business comes from relationships, understanding the players at all the layers, the individual federal humans. Because if you don't have time to learn about your federal buyers, they sure as heck do not have time to learn about you. Make it personal. These folks have everything on the line when they choose you. Amber, Lisa, closing thoughts.
Just thank you so much for having us. Sorry we had to steamroll through this information. We believe really heavily in providing you with actionable, supportable information where you can move forward. Please follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter. We try to make sure we have a lot of valuable information out there. We're very active. Come be our friends. Let's talk.
That would be absolutely wonderful. Amber, Lisa, I know you have to drop off if others have questions. Thank you so much for your generosity. Let's stay in touch, and we'd love to hear more at some point later in the year. All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Judy.
you,
Thank you so much,
Judy.
Insight.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Others, if you have other questions, thank you, Evans. I'm so glad you got what you needed. Anybody else has questions here? Please, please, please ask them here. We got another message here. Looking. Excellent. And let's see what other questions that we have here. This is all about individual, federal, human. Sign up to get monthly notifications of our topics and get your plan. And um, anyone else, I would love to hear from you. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, please tell me how we met. Drop me a note. Those are the ones that I answer first. Okay. And with that, last call. Any questions you want answered, drop them in the chat. Anything else that we have not answered? Anything else? And so I am so grateful for the chance to do this. I will say as you sign off, we're bringing our webinar program back. I'd been doing these 3 or 4 a month for many years, and then had a couple of real experimenting. What am I doing next year's? I've got a solid team behind me and able to bring you a couple of valuable events every month. Count on lots more interaction and Q&A as we get to our webinars, which are typically going to be the last Thursday of the month. And Come Together is going to be the second Wednesday, opportunities for conversations with contracting officers. With that, thank you so much for being here. Go forth, prosper, stay in touch. All right. Thanks a lot. Take care.